Hi, I'm Chavisa Woods. I'm here with Edgar Oliver, a recent contributor to the Great Weather for Media anthology, Before Passing, and I'm going to be talking with you a little bit today about a variety of things. So you're from Savannah, and you write a lot about your relationship with your mother and your sister living in this house in Savannah. And your mother telling you that you're artists and you can't trust anyone else in the town because they wouldn't understand you.
Yeah.
So, but also you sort of paint this picture of the other people in the town sort of being afraid of you all because you're so isolated and sort of your own community in the house.
Well, Mother's father died when she was about 18, I think. Let me look at the dates. Hold on, I'll be right back. Yes, Mother's father, Ben Harrison Gibson, died in 1938 when she was 18. Exactly a month before her 18th birthday. My mother loved her father very much. And she always, I think, felt that her mother was a witch. That's what she always told us. That's what she told us. And actually, after Mother died, our cousin Gibson said to us, "Your grandmother was a witch." We said, "Gosh, that's what Mother always said." I think that had a devastating effect on Mother when her father died.
So your mother was a painter, but from some of the stories you told, she also seemed to be a bit of a performance artist. You write about her going to the roof of your house and wailing into the sky and wailing into the storms. And I was just wondering, is that something she did often?
She did that regularly, yeah. Like, I don't really know how often because I was, 10 or something. I know, the sense of time is so strange then. But, it's something she would do. I'd never thought of her as a performance artist. That's an interesting idea, because in a way our mother was like that. She when Mother died, after Mother died in Washington, D.C., we found, and Mother died in the room she rented on the top floor of Mr. Schweyer's rooming house in Washington. And after Mother died, we found there her Halloween costume, her last Halloween costume, for the last Halloween she was alive. And I have her hat. Do you want me to get it and show it to you? I love this hat. This was Mother's hat that she made for herself for Halloween.
What was the costume?
She was Dr. Diabolicus.
Who is Dr. Diabolicus?
He was a traveling peddler of magical potions and herbal brews.
Was he a real person or someone she made up?
He was someone Mother made up, and she was Dr. Diabolicus. And this was her hat, and then she had a black net bag that she had filled with bottles of strange potions that she had made from old Vicks Vapor Rub bottles and Listerine bottles and things that she had painted with labels. And,
did you ever try any of the potions?
Well, the bottles were actually empty. I don't think I would have dared to try any of them if they had liquid in them. And, well, when Mother would come visit us in New York, when we were living in the house on 10th Street, we would take Mother out at night with us because we'd go to nightclubs all the time there. And Mother loved going to nightclubs with us, so we would go a lot to the Pyramid with Mother.
I know the Pyramid.
Which is where I started out performing, because Bobby Bradley, who ran the Pyramid, said to me, "I hear you write poetry, why don't you perform some poetry here?" So that's how I got started performing.
It's the Goth Club on Avenue A, yes.
Yeah. And once while we were there with Mother, he came up to Mother and said, maybe you should do a performance here. And Mother got very excited about doing a performance at the Pyramid. And at that point, Helen and I became horrified. And we told Mother, look, this is our life in New York, and we don't want you to do this. And she said, oh, okay. She seemed to understand. Mother had been so possessive all through our childhood that we finally escaped. We thought if Mother kind of started performing in New York, it would be like, taking over our lives again.
She may buy a house in Westchester and move you both into it and start performing in New York.
Yes. so we told Mother she couldn't perform at the Pyramid, which in retrospect was possibly a little horrible, but it was just a form of self-defense. Mm-hmm. What Mother wanted to do was a performance about the Empress Justinia and her dancing bear. And she was going to play the Empress Justinian, and she wanted me to play the dancing bear. And I'm sure it would have been a magnificent performance. In fact, we found after Mother died props she'd been working on for the show. But we wouldn't let her do it.
That's quite inspired, making her son the dancing bear.
Yes. I think I'm going to put this up.
Yes, put it back. Well, you write a lot of creepy poetry. So I wanted to see how familiar you are with creepy poetry.
Okay.
So we're going to play a game of finish this line. Do you know how that works?
No.
I will begin a poem, and then I want you to finish it. So
is it a known poem, or is
these are mostly known poems, so I'm wanting to see how well you know these poems. So let's just do the first one. Hopefully you do know some of these. So finish this line. Ring around the rosy, pockets full of posies.
Ashes, ashes, all fall down.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. All right. You got one.
About the bubonic plague.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, you're 1 for 1. Double, double, toil and trouble.
Fire burn and cauldron bubble.
That's great, Edgar. 2 for 2.
Okay.
All right. Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky.
Like a patient etherized punity.
See, I think that's the money ticket right there.
That's a beautiful one.
You got it. All right, last one. You ready? So far, you've gotten them all. So let's see if you get this last one.
Okay.
Take the beak out from my heart. Take thy form from my door. Quoth the raven.
Nevermore.
Terrific, Edgar. You got them all.
Goody, yay.
You know creepy poetry.
Yes, I guess so.
So I wanted you to, if you would listen to, take one of these Dear Abby questions and respond to it with your own advice.
Okay.
Because you seem like such a wise sort of sage in many ways. And
Well, that sounds like a very interesting question.
all right. So this one is from a woman named Insulted in Connecticut. All right. Dear Abby, or Dear Edgar in this case. My fiancé Bubba and I have a small disagreement that I would love your take on. He constantly complains that he's too tired, annoyed, or busy to show me romantic or friendly affection and attention, but he goes out of his way to snuggle and play with our 2 dogs and cat. I get jealous when he kisses our dogs over and over and over again, or stays up late to play with the cat. He thinks I'm overreacting. Am I being petty, or am I justified in thinking that if he has the time and energy to give affection to our animals, he should do the same for the woman he's about to make his wife?
I think she's absolutely justified in feeling that way. And, sometimes I really do think that when I look at somebody playing with a dog or a cat or a pet, or when I'm playing with a pet or an animal, and I think, why can't people show other people that affection in that way as well? Why can't you be physically affectionate with other human beings? It seems so sad that we just don't seem to allow ourselves to do that. Um,
What advice would you give her?
Gosh. Well, she didn't really say specific. Did she say that she had tried to get him to, well, I guess she's voiced her dissatisfaction. Maybe she should dress up like a cat.
I think that's an excellent idea. Insulted in Connecticut, you heard it from Edgar Oliver, try dressing up like a cat. You have a poem that I love that you read at St. Mark's Poetry Project, I believe 2 years ago, about a road to nowhere.
Oh, okay.
It's a bit of a repetitive poem. It talks about the road to nowhere. Whichever way you drive on it, it leads to nowhere. It's one of my favorite poems, and in this and in much of your work, you seem to be pondering nowhere in sort of the same way Heidegger pondered nothing.
The road to nowhere, for me, I really meant quite literally in that there was this stretch of road in Prospect Park where when I was on it I just felt somehow magically as though I were traveling on a road that had no logical relationship with the surrounding world.
So more supernatural, perhaps, than metaphysical.
Yeah. Well, metaphysical, no. It was, in that it didn't logically lead to any place that could be looked at on a map. And so it was a magic place, you know. And that stretch of road just was a magic place for me. And when I started describing it, the only way that I could describe it was as a place that led nowhere. And it didn't really necessarily make sense, but it was the only way that I could have it make sense to me. But if you went one way, you would get nowhere. If you turned and went the other way, you would get nowhere.
Anything nowhere is different than nothing.
Yeah, because nowhere, I think, is a road that goes on forever, and that always leads somewhere. It's just you never really fully arrive. There's no end.
That's a very different thing.
Yeah. It's more like infinity. So.
I think a lot of your work, though, does lead me to start thinking about ideas like nothingness and the void, and the watermelons even seem to be filled with perhaps a blackness or some sort of nothingness that might seep out and suck everything in. You know?
It did have that quality. I guess I've always had a fascination with things that are still, like trees that, have a stillness to them. And rusting iron fences and gravestones. Just the kind of life that is in still things.
You submitted a piece, and it's going to be published in the anthology, The Albino Watermelons.
Yes.
And that's a story about sort of accidentally growing some albino watermelons underneath a children's swimming pool.
Yes.
And when I read this story, it seemed to me to be a lot about neglect was an underlying theme, and what grows out of neglect. And I was wondering if that was intentional, or if you had any other underlying themes that you had written into the story purposefully.
Well, we certainly did neglect the swimming pool. Yes, and we loved for our backyard to be overgrown with ivy.
Well, I had heard in the story you had written this horrific description of the watermelons and their albinism being this sort of thing of terror. And it got me thinking sort of about what watermelons generally represent. So why do you think it is that watermelons being albino is a horrific thing?
I don't know, but they were truly horrifying. They were white, and they seemed almost as though they were God, they were just repulsive. They almost seemed to glow with repulsiveness and
I think when you think of watermelons, you usually think of summer and of vibrance and of life. And this is sort of...
yeah, they seemed almost like some strange sort of glowing fungus. And yet they were filled, you could tell, with water. They were burgeoning like watermelons burgeon.
And you didn't open them up, though, did you?
And yeah, but they looked sort of like if you touched it, it might feel like flesh, sort of soft, and they seemed ready to burst somehow with horrificness. And just the fact that they've been growing in the dark was just such a horrible thing.
Thank you so much, Edgar. This has been an amazing interview. All right.
Thank you.
Edgar Oliver, this is Chavisa Woods for Great Weather for Media.